A very good morning and very good afternoon to the first thematic session of the annual event and the Learning Days 2024 of the Swiss NGO DRR platform. My name is Jana Junghart and I work for Helvetas, and I will start guiding you through this session. I see still a couple of people joining us, and still I think it would be good to start. And the first slides will give you an overview, so it's still sufficient time for the colleagues joining to familiarize themselves. So the song that you may just have heard, Ojalá que llueva café, let's hope in our cases it's not coffee that rains. Maybe you have coffee in your coffee cup. You are really energized to attend the next session and to dive together with us a bit deeper into the topic or into one aspect of weather, water, and climate services. Our thematic session is located here, so still right at the beginning of the learning days. And our session objective of the next 90 minutes is to share with you, or to generate a shared understanding of the state of the art, the benefits, and also the challenges to work on early warning systems and anticipatory action, of course, with a focus on the role of NGOs on a global level and in concrete case studies. After a brief welcome and introduction where we are right now, we will have inputs by colleagues, distinguished speakers, which I will introduce in a moment, on early warning systems and anticipatory action. We will then hear case studies from Madagascar and Cambodia, and then follow up in a panel discussion where you're, of course, always invited to share your questions to the chat. And at 12:30 sharp, we aim at closing. So who will guide you through the session today? Who are your session hosts? I already introduced myself, Jana Junghart from Helvetas. I'm the advisor for disaster risk management, and I'm joined by my colleague Arabella Filippona from Hex EPER, who is the thematic advisor on climate change. And very important, most important, today, our speakers, and a very warm welcome to our 4 speakers who will shed light on the different levels and different examples on early warning and anticipatory action. So I would like to welcome Ramesh Tripathi from the World Meteorological Organization, Dansam Uma from the Global Network of Civil Society Organizations for Disaster Reduction, GNDR, Hasina Razafindrakotu from JFKM in Madagascar, and Jan Chupa from People in Need, Cambodia. Those of you that have not yet joined the first session this morning may still look for, or may still need some orientation. So what we said in the morning, I will repeat it. Please keep your microphone closed if you are not speaking. Turn your camera on whenever it is possible, so that we also see a couple of familiar or still unfamiliar faces, but that we can also see who is joining. And if you have not yet done so in the first session, make sure to rename yourself, to indicate your name, and ideally also your organization. Your questions can be asked anytime in the chat. And we will provide spaces for posing them to our speakers and also to our, or to address them in the panel. Very importantly, the session is translated. If you are not an English native speaker, please go to the interpretation button at the bottom of at the bottom of the screen. I just get a question whether the slides are being shared. Can you see my slides?
Not yet.
Oh, that is interesting.
Yes, we see your screen.
See the screen.
Okay, so you see the slides on technical information and housekeeping rules. Okay, good. Otherwise, I would have doubted my Zoom skills heavily. Okay, so important, if you are in need of interpretation service to French or to Spanish, please click on the interpretation icon at the bottom of the screen. And our sessions are being recorded and will be available, including the presentations afterwards. So let's dive directly into the topic. We have seen in the morning the illustration on forecast, projections, lead times that Omar presented. Now, today, we are going to zoom in on that part. So on the part of nowcasting to weather forecasting and a little bit into climate forecasting, we are talking about early warning and anticipatory action. And why does early warning matter? And why do early warning systems matter? You see here an overview of the amount of cyclones that hit Bangladesh each year. And you also see the number of deaths per cyclone that happened in a particular year. And I would like you to focus on that, on the part in the red screen, while you still see that the red bars are high. You also see that the numbers of people dying due to strong cyclones in the country, they are declining sharply. As an example, in 1970, Cyclone Bola caused the death of 500,000 people, among others, because people were not warned and did not know that such a strong cyclone would be approaching. In 2020, when Cyclone Amphan hit in the midst of the COVID pandemic, the strength of the cyclone was similar, but people received text messaging and warning over different channels. And still people died, but only about 25 people lost their lives in an equally strong cyclone. So we can claim that early warning matters. Early warning saves lives and can reduce losses. We will hear from our colleagues or our speakers in the next moments. And before I hand over to Ramesh to give an overview of the global early warning system status and what are key aspects to consider, just a quick glance at definitions. What do we understand by early warning? And I'm referring here to the definitions coming from the Glossary of Early Action Terms published by REAP, a global early action partnership. So under early warning, we understand information that is provided in advance of a specific hazardous event, disaster, or even conflict to enable stakeholders to take timely action. So information in advance to allow to take timely action. Anticipatory action that we also cover here is about acting ahead of a predicted hazardous event to prevent or reduce acute humanitarian impacts before they fully unfold. So we talk about warning and information and forecasting that helps us to act before an damaging event may occur. So keep this in mind, as you will hear the words early warning and anticipatory action throughout the session many, many times. I would now like to hand over to our first speaker, Ramesh Tripathi from the World Meteorological Organization, to give an insight on the global status of early warning systems, what is at stake, and what are the key aspects to consider. Ramesh, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Jana, and good morning, good afternoon to everyone, wherever you are.
I'm very happy and privileged and also honored to be part of this session, especially organized by Swiss NGO DRR platform. So thank you so much for inviting me, and I'm happy to share some information about how WMO is going ahead with this early warning for all initiative in terms of global status on early warning system, and why it is very important to ensure early warning system is available for the countries in terms of climate change adaptation measure. Next slide, please. So just to give an introduction, I think we know that there has been increase in number of weather and water related events that is leading to a lot of loss of lives and even economical damages, and this has been increased over last decades compared to what was there in 90s or before that. Even I mean having these kind of losses, when there was some research done, many of the time it was suggested that people informed that they didn't receive timely early warning, and that was the reason that they could not take necessary action. And this has been highlighted that in IPCC's sixth assessment report on impact, adaptation and vulnerability, that early warning system and disaster risk management are the key cross-cutting climate adaptation options that every country should adopt at national level or regional level or even at local level. Adopting this early warning system, basically there has been some also studies or research done in terms of understanding that early warning is saving lives, and basically it is providing tenfold return of investment, meaning if you put $1 for early warning, at the end you will save $10 in response and recovery, so that it's already saving some economical value for the governments. But the problem for early warning is that the major gaps still remain, and especially in developing countries which lacks various tools or information networks that doesn't allow them to accurately or timely forecast as well as disseminate warning. Next slide.
It's coming. I'm waiting for the computer to react. Otherwise, please continue. I am trying to make the computer react.
Sure. So, following that, here is the status of early warning system available, multi-hazard, meaning hydrometeorological as well as some other hazards like earthquake or even health or pandemic. So it is mainly sharing here the status of early warning system available in WMO members country. We have 193 member country, and you could see that only 49% of the countries reported that they have multi-hazard early warning system. Some of them are having only for 1, 2, 3 hazards, but some of them having 4, 5 hazard. And the other issue is that sometimes it is not covering the entire country. I mean, it might cover only some of the vulnerable region in the country. So we cannot say that everyone is having a support of early warning in case of any hazardous event. Next slide. Basically, if you see from the previous image and here, most of the countries in Africa lacks early warning system, and this is not mainly because of technical capacity or resources. It's mainly that there is gap in observation, surface observation, especially in terms of meteorological data, hydrological data, and this has been challenged in terms of maintenance as well as to install them to ensure that they are operationally used. So this is just to show that early warning needs good quality observation data in order to see what has been the situation in the past, what is currently ongoing, and then through hydrological and meteorological model you can see how it is going to happen, the situation in next 3 days, 7 days, or even in some cases we go for sub-seasonal to seasonal in order to inform or warn population. Next slide. This is the value chain we promote. It's starting from infrastructure to service side. Infrastructure means basically we look into how best we can get observation. There are a lot of satellites as well as global products based on satellites are available. We use them, especially they are exchanged at various countries or organization, and these countries or various organizations or agencies use this satellite data to develop some products, and even even not only observation or monitoring products, but also in terms of forecasting products, because it's very important to know what is going to happen. And these products based on global data are basically shared for modeling and forecasting at national or regional level. And basically once we know that based on the current situation, historical events, and as well as the forecasting of weather, what is going to happen in terms of events such as floods and droughts. So that is mainly the national agencies in the country. They run a hydrological or meteorological model, and that is something allows them to create advisory or warning products. Once these warning products are available, it is disseminated by hydrological and meteorological agency to disaster management or to other agencies who request such kind of information for early action or anticipatory action. And this is something is very key in terms of ensuring these informations are provided not only to just warn the people, but also to take necessary action in terms of minimizing the impact or even losses at local or community level. Once this warning are available, I think various agencies, they come together, they decide what exactly should be our response in terms of any action, for example, like evacuation or for providing some aids, or even closing of some of the infrastructure like roads or even telecommunication or transport. So these are something where we work on the services side. And before that, as I mentioned, data monitoring and data collection, and in terms of developing some products on observation and forecasting, it is done through infrastructures that are available at global level or even at national level. Next slide. Why I was saying about early warning is mainly that we have been given a mandate by UN Secretary General Professor Antonio Guterres, who during 22 World Meteorological Day announced that everyone on this planet should be covered or protected by early warning system, and especially in the next 5 years. And this is what is allowing WMO as well as other international partners to come together to ensure that everyone on the planet or has an early warning system, and they are not taking anything is not coming as a shock, any hydrological or meteorological event, and they have some kind of warning which are having with a lead time that can allow them to take some necessary action. So we are working now for early warning for all, and especially to ensure that all the countries are covered by early warning system, especially in terms of having early warning at the national level. Next slide. When we say early warning system, especially for multi-hazard, we have 4 pillars we call. The first one is disaster risk knowledge, where we collect information about hazards, vulnerability, and exposures. And these are very important in terms of understanding, in case there is any event, what kind of vulnerability the community have, what can be exposed element, and how best it could be protected or managed in terms of ensuring that we minimize or prevent losses as much as possible. The second component is mainly about observation and monitoring and forecasting products of hazards. Basically, this allows, especially WMO being the lead, we work with the various agencies which provide global information. Then at national level, working with national meteorological and hydrological services that help them to develop some kind of monitoring and early warning products that could be disseminated. The pillar 3 on orange is mostly once the early warning is available, it is disseminated and communicated to various stakeholders, including population. And it is very important to understand who are the right stakeholders and what are the ways that we need to send this warning to ensure that it is not reaching 1 hour before. For example, it should reach as much as early possible, so that early warning and early action could be clubbed in a way that people can save their lives, as well as some of the important economical materials that could help them to continue their day-to-day living. The last pillar is on preparedness and response. We need to ensure that communities or local authorities, being the first responder, they have necessary capacities in terms of responding to any hazardous event, and then make sure that it is done in a very coordinated and collaborative approach. So these are the 4 pillars that early warning systems approach manage, and it is very important that we not only work on one of the pillar, but to ensure that all the other pillars are working for each other, and there is some interlinkages that happens. For example, disaster risk knowledge is very important as an input to modeling and forecasting, so that we can develop not only just a forecast but as an impact based forecast. For example, I mean, it's not very good to give population and information about how the weather will be or how much amount of rain it will happen, but it is more important that populations are informed that this amount of rain will create this much of impact, or these areas will be impacted, so that necessary action could be taken. So next slide, please. Here, just wanted to share that how we are linking early warning to early action. As I said, once we have impact-based forecast, it could definitely allow various stakeholders, especially NGOs and international organizations working on anticipatory actions and response, to carry out measures that can help in minimizing the loss of the people and population, especially the communities where it is very hard to reach. So it's very important that early warning is linked to early action, so that we are not taking any event as a shock, rather being prepared and ensure that we have a proactive approach in terms of responding. This is very important that there are some incapacity in terms of coordination and collaboration, or even having technical capacity from translating the early warning to early actions, and this is what we are trying to work under this early warning for all initiative, especially to ensure that populations as well as other stakeholders are provided warning and they have necessary capacity for early action. As I said, collaboration is key across all sectors and users, so that we co-design and co-implement various approaches or methods that could allow us to ensure that there is a limited or even no impact to population or other stakeholders. We welcome various actors who are working on early action to collaborate with us, so that once we are doing early warning, we also ensure that there is an anticipatory action or early response carried out at various level. Some of the key aspects to consider for early warning, as I said, I mean, early warning should be co-designed with various stakeholders involved in the end-to-end value chain. As I said, there are ways to ensure that international or national agencies work together with NGOs and communities for data collection, even on having some kind of modeling and forecasting, even implemented at very local level. Then to ensure that one early warning system is not sufficient. Sometimes it's very important that multiple models are applied, and then the forecastings are compared and then used in better decision making, because sometimes what we have seen that if we rely on only one model, it might happen that this model might not be very accurate, and then there are chances that we could give false warning. And then better to have a kind of decision support system, because decisions for response or communication should not be done by one stakeholder, but it's an opportunity where we could involve various stakeholders in terms of ensuring that we know what are the pros and cons in terms of warning, as well as ensuring for any response to warning actions which we take in terms of minimizing the losses at local level. As I said, like, it's not very important to do only forecasting, but rather do impact-based forecasting, so that various stakeholders know what exactly should be their role in terms of minimizing the loss as much as possible. Warning should be accurate. We try our best to ensure the accuracy of warning is very high. As I said, we use a lot of global and satellite products, but we integrate local observation data also, so that it is very well calibrated and our accuracy of warning increases. And the most important is time. You should have enough time to take action, so we need to consider that any warning provided should be timely disseminated, so that all the stakeholders, including population, has enough time to take necessary action. Community as first responders, they should be provided with necessary knowledge and skills, so that they respond to any event while they wait for external support to come in and support in their response mechanism or strategy. So this is very important, that not only to provide support at national level, but even at local level. And this is what various NGOs are doing in terms of building capacities of community to ensure that they are also considered more as a stakeholder rather than beneficiaries. The last thing is very important, that we talked about the end-to-end change from infrastructure to services. Or imagine any event happens and then we know that there has been some loss. It is very important after every event or before any kind of event, it's very important to give some feedback, and even in terms of verification of how things have happened in the past and how best we can work together to improve. We don't want that last time, imagine there are 100 people who lost their life, and in the next event there are 1,000 people losing. It should not be like that. Once we have, say, some losses, we need to continuously work together in terms of minimizing these losses as much as possible, and being prepared for the upcoming event is the most important thing. So I think that's the last point I wanted to raise. I think I finished my slide, but I'm happy to take any question from any of the participants. So back to you, Jana.
Thank you so much, Ramesh. What a ride through the current status of early warning systems. We have time to take one question from the chat now. We will collect all questions, even if we cannot yet cannot answer them all now. For the moment, I do not see a question in the group chat. So let me summarize one or 2 points from the presentation. I think what you really importantly highlighted was the importance of collaboration between the different stakeholders. So I'm also very glad that we can have different organizations and different functions speak here. And second, the importance of the early warning system. So it's not about the warning only as such, but also on what it is based and what is being done with the warning. And moving towards anticipatory action, this is what we're going to look at. I see questions in the chat. Yes, the PowerPoint will be shared, not in the chat, but if I understand correctly, via the NGO DRR platform website. And then I have one question that I would like to share. Ramesh, what specific roles do you see NGOs playing in effective early warning systems? What do we do best as NGOs, or what rather not?
Yeah, thanks, Jana, and thanks, Banita, for that question. I think for NGOs, you play a big role in especially Pillar 1 and even in terms of Pillar 3 and Pillar 4, where I'm sure you contribute a lot in terms of gathering data on risk, vulnerability, and exposure, as well as in terms of response and recovery, because I'm sure many of the NGOs are involved in ensuring necessary response or recovery measures are carried out at community which are affected by any disastrous event. So in a way, this is something we really appreciate NGOs contributing to early warning system and to ensure that basically this is continuing and more collaboration is carried out with the national agency. In terms of what needs to be done is basically it's very important that NGOs connects with the disaster management agencies, hydrological and meteorological agencies in the countries, and to provide some kind of feedback. What is your expectation from them? What kind of warning you want? What particular information you would like to see in the early warning bulletins or advisory? Because sometimes national agency, they just inform that this area is going to get impacted, but it is very important that in that area you can share that basically you need number of people, number of men, number of women, number of children, that can help you to better plan your intervention during response and recovery phase. So this is something is very critical. And as well as I mentioned that as you know the situation on the ground, it is very important that you regularly provide feedback or verification of the forecast or warning that is provided by the national agency, saying that hey, you provided an advisory that there is going to rain this much, or the level of water will be this much in the river, but we see that it is lesser or it is more. So these kind of feedback can help national agency to improve their products and also warning communication. So I hope I was able to answer very quickly or briefly your question. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ramesh. I see that there are a number of other questions, very relevant one. We note them down and we'll give you a chance to ask them, or we'll ask them on your behalf during our discussion with the speakers. Great, thank you so much. I would now like to go to the second, let's say, pillar of the session, which is anticipatory action, a term that has been coined a few years back in the Red Cross, Red Crescent movement, which is up till now also pioneering on these initiatives, but many more actors have started elaborating approaches to act before an event happens. And I would like to welcome now our next speaker, which is Dansam Uma. He works for GNDR, the Global Network of Civil Society Organizations for Disaster Reduction, and is the coordinator for Local Leadership for Global Impact, an initiative that GNDR is hosting with a focus on anticipatory action, and has also co-authored a recent publication that he'll also share. So Dansam, the floor is yours to shed more light on what it is that makes anticipatory action special, particular, and very much needed.
Thank you, Jana. I hope you can hear me loud and clear.
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, fine. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone. I'll share with you on anticipatory action with a special focus and emphasis on scaling up locally led anticipatory action as an output from our local leadership for global impact project that was implemented between 2021 and 2023 in collaboration with the 3 CSOs in Southern Africa, SAF, FJKM, who will later on in this webinar present their case study from Madagascar, CAD from Malawi, and CDs from Mozambique. Over to the next slide. So what is anticipatory action? I just want to give a brief overview so that we really get to understand, just as Ramesh has done with, of course, early warning. So in these next few slides, I'll give a presentation on what anticipatory action is. And from this picture, this picture captured from one of our members from Malawi, you can see that these community members are, of course, trying to rehabilitate a wall of a house after a disaster. Next slide, please. So just a few statistics We realize that in the last 10 years alone, 83% of all disasters were caused by extreme weather and climate-related events. These, I think, of course, corresponds with what Ramesh has said before. Then, of course, we have around 410,000 plus more people have been killed by extreme weather and climate-related events, most by heat waves and then storms. And if you look at the picture, of course, on the left, you realize that you see on the graphs, you see that the pandemics are going up in red, climate change is going up, the conflicts are increasing globally, but you realize that the economy is really coming down. And the conclusion from this cartoon is that the disasters are collaborating better than we in this space should. Next slide. So what really is anticipatory action? So anticipatory action, of course, it refers to a series of actions that are taken to first reduce, prevent, or mitigate the impacts of specific, of course, or forecast hazards before it occurs or before the most acute impacts are felt. So the focus here is on reduction, prevention, and mitigation so that the impacts are reduced. Then the actions are carried out of course, based on a forecast or early warning that has been talked about before of when and where the event will unfold. Then anticipatory action, it takes different forms and happens on a range of scales, of course, depending on the nature of hazard that is being felt and the local context, and of course, the nature of the nature of actors that are really trying to implement anticipatory action. To the next slide. So what is the objective of anticipatory action? I'll use, of course, 3 examples from Anticipation Hub, Start Network, and Anticipation Hub. So the first one is to reduce potential impacts of forecastable hazards. So the objective is just to reduce the potential impacts. Then second is to enable actors take anticipatory action before the crisis takes place, thus reducing their humanitarian impact. We really need to reduce the losses in lives, assets, and livelihoods. Then, of course, the third one is to acting ahead of predicted hazards to prevent acute humanitarian impacts before they fully unfold. The next slide. So what are the key, of course, requirements of anticipatory actions? The first is, of course, dependable forecasts from early warning. So dependable forecast for weather-related events and expert judgment for non-weather-related events. So we can have both the dependable forecasts and, of course, expert judgments, then accurate risk assessment data. So, of course, anticipatory action is big on data. It is data that helps to predict the likelihood of an hazard occurring and, of course, its potential impact. So that data that can be collected, of course, by the Met departments or even from the CSOs that are working with the communities. Then, of course, the value of forecasts for planning actions depends on the level of accuracy, of course, and the amount of the lead time. So there's need for accuracy so that for us to plan, the data that is, of course, all the forecasts really need to be accurate. Then the last one is a well-established system for communicating early warning to the at-risk communities. So we have to have a channel of communication, and it has to be well-established and reliable so that the communities that are going to be impacted get the information in time, and it should be well established so that there's an element of trust, that element of building the trust of the community, such that when you tell them that the floods, hey, look here, the floods are going to hit, or the cyclones are going to hit, they trust the information that you are providing so that they move to higher grounds or evacuate. To the next slide. So just a few grammatical representation. From this diagram, you see that we have timelines, of course, then we have on top, we have escalating trigger, then a shock as it moves, it removes diagonally. So we hear what happens prior to the crisis. There is a longer target for DRR measures, then there is emergency preparedness. Then we trigger this early warning. There's that element of early warning. You see it in a dotted line, of course, this is orange color. Then there's this window of opportunity to act ahead of a crisis. That is now where anticipatory action, early action is taken to mitigate humanitarian impact on communities and marginalized groups. So remember this window, this is where we really need to act. Then what happens after the shock? So the post-shock, we have post-shock recovery, post-shock and recovery, then conventional humanitarian, of course, response. We have issues of early recovery, then we have reconstruction. If the infrastructure is, of course, destroyed, we really have to reconstruct so that the communities are able to bounce back. Then on anticipatory action, what are the aims? I again use this diagram. On the vertical scale, we see the humanitarian's need. Then on the horizontal scale, we have the timing. If you look at the first one in yellow, we have the traditional or the conventional humanitarian response. Then, of course, then the second one, the one in white, we realize that, of course, there is early signs. Then once you, of course, when this shock is realized, you find that the impact is reduced when you use anticipatory action, the one in white. So if you deploy anticipatory action, the white line, you realize that there is of course some impact, and there is a reduction in the shocks, and that is what we call anticipatory action. To the next slide. So to a few building blocks on anticipatory action, of course, basing on our project on LLGI, the first, it starts from a forecasting system to reduce crisis. So the first is one of the building blocks is a robust forecasting and decision-making framework, what you would call a trigger. Then established action plans. What action plans do you have? Of course, to work with the communities. Then there needs to be pre-arranged financing. You need to have an amount of financing set aside such that when a crisis or a disaster strikes, you have the opportunity to get finances from this pre-arranged financing to mitigate. Then anticipatory action plans or the early actions are deployed, then finally, the eventuality is that we have reduced crisis. To the next slide. So to the next section of the presentation, I'll now present to you our locally led anticipatory action guide and toolkit. Of course, how civil society organizations can engage with communities. The emphasis here and the emphasis and focus is on communities and collaborate with mandated, technical, and donor agency to localize and scale up early warning and early action. So the guide is available on our website, and that is the link. And if you scan this QR code, it will take you to the guide. To the next slide. So just a brief overview of the guide. The guide was developed, of course, with CSOs, the 3 CSOs I'd mentioned before, SAFF JKM from Madagascar, CAD in Malawi, and CIDs in Mozambique, of course, as a response to the cyclones that have frequented that belt in Southern Africa. It was work, of course, an output of a project, the Local Leadership for Global Impact project, implemented by GNDR for the 3-year period. So to the main approaches applied in locally led anticipatory action, we have community-led early action, we have locally led early action, and enhanced participatory contingency planning. So there's also an element of contingency planning before we really implement the anticipatory action. So embedded in the guide, of course, are 14 downloadable tools to support the CSOs that we work with and other CSOs that are interested. These downloadable guides, these downloadable tools, same to the guide, are available in English, French, Portuguese, and Spanish on our website. So the tools here are like gap and policy analysis, the technical working group terms of reference. We have a tool on standard operating procedure for early action. I won't mention all of them. Then a tool on early action protocol, then early action alert. Then we have a tool on microgrant management. Of course, as we had said, that predetermined financing, of course, is one of the building blocks for anticipatory actions. So we have to have a tool on how to manage really these microgrants, then a tool on sharing the lessons learned. So the lessons that we have learned, or the CSOs learn, how do they really share these lessons with other CSOs? Then a tool on case studies and impact stories template. Then lastly, a tool on roundtable guidance, because there's a need for policy. Why we have this tool for roundtable guidance is that policy, and of course trying to influence policy both at the national, regional, or global level on issues of anticipatory action. Next slide, please. So of course, we've also pointed out a few limitations to the guide. So I'll mention the 3 limitations that I've highlighted. First, the utilization of the survivor and community-led crisis response approach, and of course the microgrants that I'd mentioned, this is a component that is rapidly expanding. The learning presented in our guide is based on limited experience of these locally led anticipatory action, of course, focusing only on the cyclones in Southern Africa. Then another limitation is emphasis is placed on the use of improved local early warning systems and available focus to inform decision-making to trigger early action, and how learning from these can be used to inform development of triggers. Then the final limitation is the use of the technical risk models or focus can be beyond the mandated capacity of some CSOs. As we are all aware, of course, the level of course, expertise or the size of these CSOs differ. Some are small, some are well-grounded. So the use of the risk model might be beyond the mandate of some CSOs, and this can require accompaniment from technical agencies who maybe some of these CSOs cannot easily access. They may need the support, but the support may not be readily available. Next slide, please. That brings me to the end. Of course, I'll be happy to pick a few questions, 1 or 2 questions, before Asina, of course, now gives us the practical experience from Madagascar. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dansam. So you have now time to digest what Dansam said. If there is an urgent question or a question for clarification that you would like to ask now is the time. And from our side, as the facilitators, we are now very much looking forward to hearing from Hasina directly what does anticipatory action, what can it look like in practice, and what are their learnings, but also challenges they have been facing in the past years? I do not see a question popping up now, and would therefore suggest, due to time that is flying, that we move to Hasina's input. And please feel free to just pop the question in the chat whenever it comes up to you, and it's possible in English, French, and in Spanish, however you like. So, Hasina, the floor is yours. I hand over to you, and just one last remark, I would ask you to really stick to the time so that we have time for questions. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Jana. Morning, everyone. Good afternoon. I would like to more be talking about practical ways of how the anticipatory action has been implemented. What has been the role of us as part of the local NGO, member of GNDR, and what have been the challenges and the success stories that have been done throughout all the initiatives that have been done here in Madagascar. So those experiences has been gathered through experience for the project Local Leadership for Global Impact. For those who might not know, Madagascar is a figure as part of the countries which are more exposed to cyclone and the effects of climate change. Or every year, over 2 million people are in need in terms of related health. So this has been made us to have this initiative of really intervening before the SARS, so that we could prepare and engage community in terms of reaction, so that we could limit the impact of the disaster after. This slide, please. So for this initiative, we do had the initiative of locally led anticipatory action. For that purpose, we have been able to gather the phase of the initiative throughout five main phases, which is mainly based on the engagement and participation of the communities, which will be engaged throughout the risk assessment, the risk analysis, and the development of different planning, so that they could be engaged to develop their own plan, a reaction protocol, or contingency planning, or community-led reaction. So we have been able to really help the community to be engaged in those. Firstly, engage to share information timely, and second, engage to share how they are facing, what kind of coordination are existing at local level. So those participation led to a development of a new reaction protocol, where we could gather what action has been done in terms of reaction, who will be in charge, and from what level the trigger will be activated. And this plan has been developed locally. And after that, we have been able to activate some action related to early action. And so through those plans, we have been able to have activation for all different types of cyclones. And we have been able to see that the engagement of community has been really been few throughout all the initiatives. As part of the NGO, we have had a role of engaging the communities, strengthening their capacity, and linking them with the coordination.
Excuse me for interrupting. I am hearing that your sound is not sufficiently good for the interpreters to do interpretation. Is there anything that you could do? change
Okay,
your
is it clear now?
microphone. Say again?
No, is it okay now? Or maybe I will.
Yeah, sometimes the connection is breaking. Makes it hard for the
Okay.
interpreters to follow.
And now is it okay?
Can I get a feedback from the
Yes, I
interpreters?
am hearing from the interpreters in French. It's better. Is it so
Okay.
for the Augusto, can you also just confirm that you hear Hasina properly, please? Okay, that's much better, Hasina. Thank you.
Perfect.
Okay. Okay, great. So as I said, as part of the local NGO, we have been able to link the community initiative to what is existing at national level. We have also been able to really help the community in terms of capacity building and to help them to activate those early action throughout the early action protocol. So that's what we have done practically in terms of these experiences through the local leadership of global impact that has been done from our side. Next slide, please. So, practically what have been done in terms of community-led approach, one part of a way to activate anticipatory action is the activation of microgrant mechanism, which consists to allocate funds to community to permit them to have community-led planning, including to take early action and to respond quickly to new issues related to crises. So how did we proceed related to that? We have been able to empower local structures like local authorities, local associations, local groups that could be able to take action, to plan, and to implement their own early action. This microgrant mechanism has been helpful to community to have prepositioned fund to the community so that after having the trigger activated, they could have action already taken into consideration in the local level. So how did we proceed? In that case, we firstly we established microgrant mechanism. Throughout capacity building, we gather together local structures and community groups. We develop together with the community planning and some types of activities and projects that they could lead once the trigger are activated. And after that, we release funds that could be managed locally to the community in terms of activation to early action. So this microgrant mechanism has been really impactful to the community. As part of example, it has been we have been able to preposition some kit in terms of wash, in terms of food, in terms of emergency kit to the community. We have also been able to activate action within the volunteers and to help communities to evacuate timely during a disaster. Next slide, please. So in terms of main successes within this approach, what have been really helpful related to those actions related to locally led anticipatory action was the entire engagement of authorities, local authorities, which has been involved and linked within the national or local authorities. They have been also linked through with the national early warning system, and they have been also been together shared information timely from local level. We have also been able to involve them in terms of coordination and decision making. One success was the activation of microgrant mechanism, which mainly support the activation of action timely or the allocation of funds to the local structures. And some activation of early action has been done throughout the Patsirai and Natien Freddy cyclone, which has been successes from our side. And throughout all everything, we have the community engagement. Anyway, what are the main challenges? The main challenges are the fact that sometimes we as NGO don't really have enough resources, limited resources in terms of access to technological and resources to allocate to anticipatory action effort. Also, sometimes we can't access to some information really related to early warning system at local level, specifically for our country, developing country. We do not really have some information related to local level, but only from district level. It really limits the action related to anticipatory action. Sometimes also, we as local national NGOs, we do not really have accessibility to data. And sometimes we have limit in terms of coordination at national level. So from that purpose, there is a really a big need in terms of coordination at national level to be strengthened. Next slide, please.
Thank you so much, Hasina. I think this with the key main challenges. Maybe it is good to close. So that we have a good understanding also what you concretely in Madagascar are still struggling with, despite all the important measures that you have already undertaken to be in support of the communities that you work with. I also stop here because we still have one more case study that will be shared from Cambodia. And this is interesting because it will be about the national early warning system, which has been developed with the support of people in need. And in Madagascar, there's a very similar process ongoing where the national digital early warning system is being developed to also with support of many non-governmental stakeholders. So I think it's a nice bridge over the continents that the systems, the two digital early warning systems at national scale, that they may have a lot in common or could even have more in common. I have received one question that I would like to direct. I don't know to whom it was, but I assume it was to you, Hasina. How have you managed to get local communities to be actively involved in taking early action? How do people take ownership of the processes? May I direct this one question to you?
We have mainly involved communities for our capacity building first.
Can you go back to the mic? Like now your voice is breaking again.
Is it better?
Yeah, much.
So one mainly important thing is that we engage community throughout capacity building and awareness raising at community level. So people have been sensitized in terms of the importance of their engagement, in terms of the process of early action, process related to disaster risk reduction. If related to that, they have been improved in terms of capacity building. They have been involved in terms of coordination meeting at local and national level, and that's why where we had their ownership really improved in terms of these local authorities, indeed, from our side. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So capacity building and really engaging people to create ownership. Thank you very much. We went through the questions and are now shifting continents. Do I see Jan?
Yes, I'm here.
You are here. Excellent. Welcome, Jan.
I made it.
And yeah. So glad to hear about how the early warning system in Cambodia was built up and what are success stories and challenges. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much.
8 to 10 minutes.
Yes, I'll try to keep it short, even though I can talk about the system for hours. I'll try to really focus on the main points, and then if there are any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them and share the presentation. When you mentioned that we talk about the national system in Cambodia, it always makes me proud to hear that. Of course, it's not that I built the system, but when we talk about this early warning system 1294, that's how we call it in Cambodia. The initial idea definitely wasn't to build the national system, and I'm sorry, I don't think I can. I can manage the. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So me just briefly about the background.
Just tell me click, okay? Just say
okay.
click on next slide. I
will do. Thank you. Just briefly about the background, what it is, the early warning system 1294. So normally when we mention early warning system, it's a tool that it was mentioned here that helps authorities, organizations, whoever, to communicate some warnings to people that are at risk of some hazards. The team of people in need in Cambodia started working with this system more than 10 years ago, 2011, after a big flooding in Cambodia. It started as a small grassroots project, and because it was quite successful in one commune, they added one more commune, and then one more district, and then another province. And after 10 years, became a national system. It's so I believe that if we thought about it as a national system since the beginning, I hope it wouldn't take 10 years to get there. But that's the story of the early warning system 1294 in Cambodia. But indeed, the story was quite successful, and because of that, we were approached by different donors to try to replicate the system in other contexts. Not that much different, because we still talk about Southeast Asia. So now we're replicating the system in the Philippines and in Lao PDR. But the idea, the objective of PIN is to try to work with the system in other countries. As I mentioned at the beginning, when we talk about early warning system in general, usually we talk about the dissemination part, but of course for that you need some kind of information to communicate. When the team started working with this early warning system in Cambodia, we were facing the lack of real-time data, or not even real-time data, in any kind of data about the water levels, about the water flows, about the states of rivers, basically in Cambodia in general. And honestly, 10 years later, without the system, we would be facing very similar situations. The development of the data management, data monitoring is rather slow. So maybe if we can click and go to hazard monitoring. So in this presentation, I would focus on two parts primarily. Hazard monitoring, how we monitor the data, how we feed our system with some real-time data, and then about dissemination system, which is maybe the more interesting part. So data monitoring, very briefly. We use sonar-powered, solar-powered, sonar-based water gauges, which are, and we can click, and I can maybe describe it on the picture. Which are these sensors? It's nothing new. It's being used in all over the globe. What's different, maybe for EWS 1294 in Cambodia, is that we managed to take these sensors to Cambodia and build them again from local resources. So now there is a company in Phnom Penh in Cambodia that builds these sensors for people in need. We completely outsourced this already. We had this knowledge in-house. Now it's being done by a local company, and that's our exit strategy. Also in other countries where we try to replicate the system, to have a local producer, because that's what we've seen in many systems around the globe, where we tend to bring some expensive modern sensors to monitor some kind of data, and they work until they work. Then we find out that we don't have funds to fix them, or there are no local capacities to fix them. So these sensors are being installed in under the bridges, and they basically monitor the water level, and they can detect if the water level is going up. And we have, together with local and national authorities, we set up thresholds, some trigger points for every site where we install these sensors, and these sensors then communicate every 15 minutes, sending data to our server, communicate this information. And so in real time, we can pull the data from the server and show it on the map. So even now, if you go to EWS1294.com, you can see the actual state of the river levels in Cambodia. So far, we have almost 50 sensors installed all over the country. Once we have the data, once we send it, once we provide this information to the national authorities and provincial authorities, and so they have some tool that tells them, and now we are close to some warning level. Maybe we should communicate this information to the communities. So we also give them access to this dissemination dashboard. We created the dissemination dashboard for provincial and national authorities in Cambodia, and it follows common alert protocol, meaning that there are a set of 5-6 questions. It's a simple form they have to fill out, and at the end of this form, they can select to which channels they want to communicate the alert. And so then basically they can communicate the same information from various communication channels. Here we talk primarily about IVR, which is interactive voice response, and simply it's a pre-recorded voice call. So in reality, what would happen if you would receive the alert through IVR is that basically our system would call you. So you would receive a call, and there would be a pre-recorded message with some recommendations, some information telling you what to do, that maybe there's impending flooding in your area. And so there are some recommendations what you can do. We built this whole structure and the whole system around floodings, but now the whole system is being used by the national authorities and provincial authorities for any type of hazard. Primarily still for floods, but also for droughts. I'm still talking about flooding because our monitoring system can provide only information about floods as of now. The last point I wanted to mention in this presentation is somewhat the breaking point for us, because until now our system worked on a so-called subscription model, meaning if people in the communities that are at risk of flooding wanted to, okay, we can go to the next slide. Sorry, I keep forgetting about one click. If people in the communities of risk want to register to our system, they need to dial the number 1294. That's why the system is called 1294. And when they dial this number, when they call 1294, they will hear automatic menu guiding them how to register. So press 1 if you are from Battambang province. If you are from Battambang province, press number 2 if you are from this district, and it goes down to commune level. So in the end, after you finish your call, you are registered to specific commune that you choose, which is very inclusive in the end, because you can then receive these interactive voice responses. So even if you cannot read, you can still understand what kind of hazard is there. But now what we making a switch to, or we're trying to make a switch for broadcasting model, meaning that even people that are not registered to the system would receive the alert. And this is being done thanks to cooperation with SDC, with HEX and Caritas Switzerland. So in this project, now we are trying to integrate the new modality, and that's SMS broadcasting, basically. So in the end, basically, for the authorities that are filling out this short form I described before, there would be additional option for them to send the alert, to send the information also through SMS. And this is really basically a revolution for the whole system, because even though we have many people registered to the system, and as of now we have more than 140K people registered to the system, the broadcasting modality allows you, of course, to talk to anyone without having to register them to the system. This SMS broadcasting has been tested already twice. It works well, and the idea is to officially launch it within next 2 or 3 months. And
Jan, can you indicate me what's still, it's super interesting, but could you indicate me what I should still share? Because I see there are a few more slides, but time is running, and maybe we give time for questions in a moment. So what would you like to focus on?
Yeah, I think that in a nutshell, that was what I wanted to cover. Okay. The monitoring system, the dissemination part, and now as I mentioned, the revolution to our system, switching from subscription model to broadcasting, thanks to HEX and SDC projects. So
okay,
we can maybe give a space for questions.
Sure, gladly so. Are there any questions? Maybe also Arabella has the overview of whether there are still questions unanswered. Otherwise, I would like to thank you very much, Jan. It's super interesting, especially also the shift from the registration-based to the broadcast-based. And I'm sure there are a number of questions upcoming. Arabella, may I hand over to you?
Yes, thank you very much, Jana, and thank you, Jan. It's been interesting to hear about a case where 2 DRR platform members are involved, the Nurture project implemented by HEX and Caritas Switzerland. So it's great also to hear about concrete cases where our members are directly gaining experience with these innovative early warning systems. We don't have any new questions from the chat right now, so please feel free to enter all your open questions, comments into our chat box. And we would now like to go on with our panel discussion with our four speakers. And we have about 10-15 minutes left for the final discussion. And while there are questions coming in from the audience, I would like to start with a question, maybe to both Ramesh and Jan. And Ramesh, you mentioned the ambitious goal that UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has defined, that within 5 years we want to achieve early warning systems for everyone on the planet. The question: do we reach this goal, and how? What is still needed that we achieve the goal? What are potentials, opportunities? Over to you, Ramesh.
Yeah, thank you, Arabella, for this question. I think, yeah, within WMO also, we are continuously monitoring how we are progressing to ensure this early warning for all initiative is timely implemented in all the countries. And yeah, it's a bit challenge to ensure that this is achieved in next 5 years, especially now only 2.5 years or 3 years remaining. The thing is, what we have planned here is that we have initially shortlisted 30 countries, priority countries. It was done a year back, and then we have started to ensure that at least in these priority countries, we have early warning system available at national level, and then it is disseminated to population and other stakeholders. The other thing is, in order to achieve this, I think it's very important that we need to build upon what is already available rather than bringing something new, so we are continuously assessing what is already existing in the countries, how best we could ensure that it could be scaled up or it could be improved. For example, Jan mentioned about pin 1294. I am also working in Cambodia, and we are trying to see how best this 1294 could be scaled up to cover the entire country, as well as it could be linked with the national system that can help us, the national meteorological and hydrological agencies, to use this system also when they are monitoring as well as forecasting early warning for floods. So this is something, it's very important that we build upon or we connect with various other systems which are available and try to see how best we could achieve. The other most requirement is in terms of financial resources. I mean, early warning for all is a big framework, but there is not much financial resource available, and WMO together with other international organizations are continuously approaching various donors and foreign affairs to provide contribution. So at least the pace of implementation for this early warning for all is not going very quick because of financial resources, as well as to continuously check with countries and donors what exactly they are implementing in the country to ensure we are not duplicating the effort. So I hope I was able to answer your question, Arabella. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And these financial, let's say also political constraints are of course a key barrier. But I really very much like what you were saying. Let's build on what is available on the existing systems in place. To Jan, the question, you're working in a context or with a project setting where you're testing these, as I said, innovative approaches. What would be your recommendation to regions, really remote regions that have still very weak early warning coverage, where maybe, let's say, risk information is still weak, and access to digital tools, internet connectivity is also weak. What would be your recommendations for programs, projects in these areas?
That's an issue we still also face. And when we started thinking about replicating the system in the Philippines, we thought at the beginning that maybe the Philippines doesn't make much sense, because the Philippines, they are very advanced in their monitoring systems. But then when you dive more into it, you find out that there are still places where, as you mentioned, maybe the connectivity is not great, the coverage of the telcos is not there. And honestly, it's tricky for our system, because we are quite dependent on, especially on the coverage from telcos, because of course the sensors they need to send the data every 15 minutes. So getting the information about or getting the localized data, that's maybe the issue that is what we face in basically all the countries right now. That's why we try to work more and more on our network of sensors, not just to build more sensors and some more sensors, but to make them more reliable in a way that we try to add more data sources. But it is a tricky question, definitely. But then when we talk about early warning system, maybe the part that we want to focus on also is the dissemination part. And that's why when Finn started working with the early warning system, they first what they were thinking of is how to overcome the literacy barrier. So that's why they came up with the IVR system. So basically a message that is received as a phone call. But we know that in some areas maybe there's still lack of connectivity at all, or people have no access to cell phones. So in these areas, we try to also integrate more grassroots level communication channels, meaning like loudspeakers or radios. But always depends on the context, of course.
Thank you, Jan. And I think this is a really great initiative, working with these voice messages to overcome literacy barriers. And you mentioned the importance of grassroots level communication, localized data. The question to Dansan and Hasina, what is your experience working with communities, local stakeholders on anticipatory action and early action, where you mentioned the complexity, the technicality of early action, to define, for example, the right thresholds. It can be overwhelming. Your recommendation is that the local partners work with experts, but how can we? What is your recommendation to organizations just starting with anticipatory action? How do we break it down so it gets these processes, early action protocols and plans, become accessible for a larger audience in that sense?
Hasina, will you go first? Or if you're not ready, I could. Fine. So, of course, onto the experience working with communities on anticipatory action, one of the biggest, of course, experiences is that there's the need, of course, to really work with the local authorities. Of course, there are systems of there are systems of authority in the community level. So when you really do stakeholder mapping and get to be acceptable, of course, with the local authorities, they will, of course, support the idea of anticipatory action. And it is through them that, of course, you will work with the communities, and that system now feeds back to the government. Of course, we have different tiers of government, but once you work with the local authorities, you go to the communities, and the implementation, of course, will have an impact in that the government at that level will be involved. Then, of course, onto breaking down anticipatory action, that is why we've come up with this locally led anticipatory action. We are trying to do anticipatory action from the local level, of course, championing the aspect of localization, such that the community members are directly involved as participants, not as mere beneficiaries, so that you engage them fully from, of course, they develop their own contingency plans. Then, of course, you tailor the anticipatory action that meets the needs of those communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Nanzam, a short answer from Hasina on that?
Oui, I will follow up in French. Alors pour nous, dans le cadre de notre expérience, ce qui a joué vraiment un rôle assez important, c'est vraiment d'impliquer une forte consolidation, une forte relation et coordination entre ce qui existe au niveau local et au niveau national. Quand on parle d'action anticipée, on ne peut pas agir sans les données qui sont disponibles au niveau national. Du coup, il faudra vraiment créer cet lien qui existe entre le local et le national level. Et au niveau local, il y a également des connaissances qu'il faudra considérer Et par rapport à ces connaissances qu'il faudrait considérer au niveau des alertes précoces au niveau national, il faudra vraiment considérer cela. Et cela ne se fera qu'à partir d'une très forte coordination et implication de ces entités au niveau local, au niveau des coordinations nationales. C'est l'importance de ce qu'on est en train d'envoyer en termes de plaidoyer, c'est d'impliquer ces autorités, ces structures au niveau local, au niveau des coordinations nationales. Et je crois que c'est une forte recommandation pour vraiment avoir une action anticipée vraiment efficace, basée sur des informations disponibles au niveau local et des informations locales transférées au niveau national. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much to both Hasina and Dansam. It's important of involving the different government stakeholders on different levels. And I think I recommend to everybody to take a look at the guide, GNDR guide, and the different tools. I think they are a great resource. And I think we have to go to the last question that would be addressed to Ramesh by Omar. What is the WMO perspective on who should deliver warning information for early warning systems and anticipatory action? What is the role of the national agencies in localizing anticipatory action? And what's the role of private providers? And maybe you can quickly also scratch a little bit Christina's question on the integration of multi-hazard systems. That's a big one, but Ramesh, over to you for that one.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm just seeing the chat for the question and also trying to remember what you asked. So yeah, in terms of, who should deliver warning information, I think it's the role and the mandate belongs to the National Meteorological and Hydrological Services in the country. They have this mandate that they should monitor, forecast, and then deliver warning information to various stakeholders at national level, for example, disaster management, even agriculture, irrigation department, for example, transport, power company. So it's a national agency that should give us initial warning information, and then from there on, various stakeholders like disaster management should take that information for their decision making on response and then deliver it to various organizations like Red Cross, NGOs, even community-based organizations who are involved in response and recovery. They should be informed, and then necessary action measures could be taken up. The next part is in terms of involvement of private. I think in many countries, private agencies are involved in terms of data collection. They have the stations maybe for dam operation and all, which are very important. And that is something we work and collaborate in our initiative called public-private engagement, where we involved various private stakeholders in terms of monitoring and data collection for various hydrometeorological hazard. One example of private-public partnership or engagement is with Google. Like we are working with Google to see how best we can have an artificial intelligence-based flood forecasting system. They have already done some pilot in some of the countries or cities, and we are working with them to in order to see what methodologies they are using, how best we could collaborate and ensure that this is very much tailored and affordable to the national agency as well as to use of users, including population. And then what is the rule?
And very, very shortly, because we have to close soon. One more sentence.
Okay, sure. I think in terms of anticipatory action, it is very important to involve national agency like disaster management. So NGO should work with disaster management because they have also some of the volunteers or some of the approaches they follow, and it should build a synergy with what NGOs are doing. So it is very important that all the stakeholders should come together, co-design solution, and then implement it jointly. So that's all from my side.
Thank you very much, Ramesh. And I would like to remind us what you said in the beginning, where you highlighted the role of NGOs, where you said NGOs have a critical role in data on risk, response and recovery, verification of the forecast, and feedback to the national agencies that you'd now put just into as the main responsible actors in this whole early warning systems and anticipatory action. Thank you very much to all the speakers, the 4 speakers today, for your very valuable presentations. Jana, do we have time for a short final reflection on the key takeaways? You also see here highlighted further resources on early warning systems and anticipatory action. And I'm handing over back to Jana for the final closing. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Arabella, for the closing words, the recap of the discussion with the speakers, and of course to all 4 speakers for sharing your insights from the very different angles that you look at early warning systems and anticipatory action, and how they need to play together and how different stakeholders need to play together. Further resources, exactly, this is just a very basic overview, but I highly recommend you, if you are interested in anticipatory action, to visit the website of the Anticipation Hub, where there is a lot of information. There are also learning opportunities, courses, and also discussing how can, especially also how can different stakeholders, which role can different stakeholders play. Also encourage you to check the other resources that I share, and we will of course share the presentations so that you can click on them as well, including the locally led anticipatory action guide. Last thing for me to do is to wish you a great lunch break or dinner break or breakfast, depending on where you are located, and to invite you warmly to join us this afternoon at 2:30 to hear about the platform experience, achievements and challenges from 5 projects around the world, to shed light on what the platform experience is on weather, water and climate services, broadening again the perspective from early warning to the broader scope of weather, water and climate services. And with this, my last thank you goes to the interpreters, Ivan and Augusto, who also managed to shift from English to French. And thank you so much for making it possible for everyone to join in every minute and follow the discussion. A big thank you, and looking forward to seeing many of you this afternoon, evening, or anyways later throughout these learning days. Have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.